My name is Jim Manning, and I'm the author of Patriotism Unhinged, available worldwide through online retailers. Today I'd like to tell you about a very important party that happened the night before the assassination in Dallas. A very rich oil mill billionaire, I probably would be, Clint Murchison, who owned over 500 companies, had a party, and it was a party to celebrate something for J. Edgar Hoover. At the party, there were lots of people. Among the guests was Madlin Duncan Brown. Now, Madlin Duncan Brown was the one of the girlfriends of Lyndon Baines Johnson for probably 20 years. She was there. We got some information from an Irish maid who was working there that day. She actually worked for one of his ex-wives, but since there was a party, she was brought over to work to help on the party. She didn't know J. Edgar Hoover was, but she called him the Bulldog. She later testified to the fact that J. Edgar Hoover and Clive Tolson, his assistant, came, and her interest was that the chauffeur that went to pick him up at the airport was expecting a large tip because he was head of the FBI and in fact didn't give anything. So she was concerned, but she also revealed a good bit about that party and who was there. Madlin Duncan Brown was at the party, and it was about to break up around 11 o'clock, I believe. At the party was Richard Dixon. He had been in Dallas because he was a lawyer for Pepsi-Cola. Joan Crawford, I think, was head of the company at that time. And so they were having some sort of a convention or something. And so he was in Dallas and he was at this party. Also, H.L. Hunt. At that time, he was the richest man in the world. A super right-wing guy. John Birch was one of the starters of the John Birch Society. The sheriff of Dallas was there, and quite a few dignitaries. And all of a sudden, at about 11 o'clock, Lyndon Johnson shows up. And when he showed up, the men excused themselves and went into Murchison's library, a very large library. They were sequestered in there for a half an hour, 45 minutes. According to Madlin Duncan Brown, she was surprised. She didn't expect them to show up there. And when that meeting broke up, Lyndon Baines Johnson came out of the meeting and he said to her, well, after tomorrow, those son of a bitches will never make fun of me again, or there'll never be a problem for me again, or whatever. It didn't really register too much with her until the next day. But she has testified to that fact to everybody. And one of the things that is sort of interesting is that of all the researchers, it seems I've never heard anybody disbelieve her story. LBJ fathered a boy with her. That's not the only person he ever fathered children with, but that's how, they were very close. They were like another second family to him. It was obvious that the discussion centered around what would happen the next day. There were probably, according to Madlin, I think maybe as many as 12 to 14 men in that room. She confronted him after the assassination. I don't know if it was that day or a week later, but she confronted him with what he had told her. And he said, God damn it, he put his hand through the wall. And he says, it was the Fat Cats. It was the Texas Fat Cats. Wasn't me, it was the Texas Fat Cats. meaning H.L. Hunt and a large group of oilmen, because Kennedy was going to repeal the 26 or 7.5% oil depletion allowance. And so that was what they had against them. Would have cost them millions. That's the reason that they were in on it. I think that there was a figure mentioned of 400,000, 100,000 for each of the 4 shooters. There were more than 4. But that could be because the Cubans hated them so bad that they would put a couple of guys in for nothing. After that, the chauffeur took Edgar Hoover back to the airport. He probably had the FBI plane. Hoover was up to his eyeballs in the assassination. And afterward, on the cover-up, things started coming out instantly. People started making the connection that this didn't work right, that didn't happen right, whatever, how about this? And the CIA was moving quickly to do a lot of murders and things like that. J. Edgar Hoover called them in and told them, he said, look, you're doing the wrong thing. He said, let all these stories come out. He said, in fact, make more stories up. He said, because the more you put out there, eventually people will just get so tired of it that they won't even listen to it. He was right. He was right. In the relationship between Robert Turnbull Crowley and Gregory Douglas, there were times whenever they'd get off point on things, and he'd make statements to Gregory Douglas that were kind of interesting. One was that the Central Intelligence Agency was responsible for Jack Kennedy, but FBI, J. Edgar Hoover, was responsible for Bobby Kennedy and for the Reverend Martin Luther King. He controlled it, the whole thing. They had not much to do with it. There was, on Bobby's, they had a couple of CIA guys who were just there watching what was going on. In Bobby's, the killer was a guy named Caesar. Last name was Caesar, I think. And he was dressed as a police security guy, and he was standing behind Bobby Kennedy, and he shot him twice in the head and once in the back. He then moved to the Philippines and lived the rest of his life in the Philippines. He wasn't Filipino, but with all the money that he had, he was like a king over there, I guess. See, all the evidence, all the criminal evidence came to the FBI. Then anything that was bad, anything that was incriminating was important to James Jesus Angleton. Everything got to the FBI. They turned it over to Angleton, and then Angleton would pass it on to the commission, the Warren Commission. And then every time the Warren Commission met and had any substance to the meeting, Gerald Ford would call J. Edgar Hoover that night at home and give him a read on what happened that day that was something he thought they should talk about. So that's the reason that I believe that he probably knew about it ahead of time. Things kept happening, though, that, it was like I've always thought of the CIA as the gang that couldn't think straight. Really, it's really unfair to say CIA all the time. There's probably 25,000 people working for the CIA, and the only people that were dirty was the people at the top, and then the people in the propaganda section, they're only told anything on a need-to-know basis. But if somebody says, we want you to come up with some more ideas about how something happened in the assassination, it's their job. Their imagination takes over. That's how it works. And but other than those people, I mean, look at, maybe there was 200 people in the CIA that worked on keeping quiet. So then you're left with 22,000 people that never had anything to do with it. They'd go every day, working the job like a milkman. The Central Intelligence Agency and the other 17 agencies who might have had some hand in it had the ability, even with all the mistakes, to keep it covered up for all this time. It's so evident. People ought to realize that if you don't look at what's out there, the evidence that's out there, you're never going to find out who did this. Because if you think after 62 years of covering it up that there's anything at all that they haven't taken out of there who would indicate who the people were involved and how it came out, that would have been foolhardy.